tons of Navy SEAL guests. We hear all about buds.
Yeah.
I rarely get to ask people about the Q course. So a lot of the listeners hadn't heard much about the Q course.
Yeah, the Q course is kind of a different environment. So I was going into the Q course within, and for those who know, the Special Forces qualification course, it's predominantly at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and Camp McCall, which is kind of close by. What makes Special Forces or Green Berets different from the rest of the special ops community is that focus on unconventional warfare and counterinsurgency. So we have like 7 core missions. A lot of guys have missions for special reconnaissance. A lot of guys have mission for counterterrorism. But that
FID mission,
that foreign internal defense.
Yeah.
But then the coin and the UW. The UW is really the unconventional warfare component. And the way I've described it to people before is Special Forces is not John Rambo. Special Forces is Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah.
When it's done correctly, especially that UW piece, it is a 12-man ODA that goes out there, links up with indigenous forces, and you're either fighting to overthrow the current government or you're working with host nation forces to beat an insurgency. But everything that you're doing is by, through, and with the local population. So probably like the biggest thing in the Q course, because no matter where you go, you're going to go through some version of small unit tactics, right? And I'd already been through Ranger School, so small unit tactics was kind of a different version of that within SF. The thing that is so unique about it is what they used to call, and I think they still, Robin Sage. And that is, at that time, it was the largest unconventional warfare exercise that's conducted in the world. And they take a huge part of North Carolina and it essentially becomes a foreign country. It becomes Pineland. And when I say it becomes a foreign country, what I mean is when you go into certain of these little rural towns out in the middle of nowhere in North Carolina and you turn on the radio, you'll hear Radio Pineland. And you're given an indige force that you've got to work with. And Pineland's got a whole history and they've got their wars and you've got to understand the geopolitics of the situation. And you're training your indige fighters and you've got to manage the politics internal with this rebel group and that rebel group with other rebel groups and the mistrust they have for U.S. forces because we can't be relied upon to, they read our history as well.
Yeah.
And
we abandoned allies.
Oh yeah, they do. They will get very specific on instances where Americans have been, and why should they trust you? And a lot of it is out of the box thinking on how do I get somebody that doesn't necessarily like me, but we have a common enemy and we have an objective and we have to find a way to meet that objective. And so how do you find common interest, common cause in order to do that? And then how do you work within the resources that you have? That was an incredible experience. I learned a lot. I learned a lot through that about properly understanding that, look, not everybody sees the world the way you see it. That doesn't mean you can't work together. It doesn't mean you can't understand the perspective. And probably the major takeaway that they just hammered home every single day was understand your operational environment. So that was the Q course. And the agreement there with Tino was, I said, I want to go SF. And, we're watching daily reports of, SF and Afghanistan and everything else that's going on. And I said, look, you're letting me go SF. I'll let you pick the group. Mm-hmm. And she goes, which group is closest to home? Like first group. Like, all right, I want you to, I said, I can't promise you that. They're going to send me where they need, but I will request first group. And that's what I ended up getting. And we up in Fort Lewis, Washington. Thank God they didn't send me to Okinawa. She would have been furious. But so she was a great sport. But that's how that went down.
And for those who don't know, second half of the training or last part of the training really is you get your language training, go DLI.
Yeah, we don't. They have an in-house language training now,
Okay.
so they do send some guys out to DLI in Monterey, California, but they have it in-house. It's all at Fort Bragg. That was. My wife was not a huge fan of what we affectionately call Vietnam, North Carolina, because she had been there when they were in the 82nd. She was not eager to go back for the Q course. But you do 6 months of, most of us do 6 months of language training. Mine was Thai. Yeah, Sawadi Kap Kun Sabadi Ru, Pompintan Ropi said. And I've just spoke all the Thai I remember.
That's funny. Same thing with me. I know more Dari from being in Afghanistan than I know Urdu, Urdu was my language. Yeah. And but when I learned Urdu and I went to Pakistan, and everyone that speaks Urdu, even though it's the national language, speaks English as well. So they'd rather speak English with you.
Yeah. No, it was a great experience, and first group was a great experience. I loved serving with those guys. Loved the mission set.
A lot of rain, a lot of training in cold, wet environment there.
It was when SF, when we're not overseas doing operations or we're training, we will do training missions with U.S. allies. So when if I'm not in Iraq, I'm in Korea training Korean special operations, or I'm in Bangladesh training Bangladeshi border guards and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I know what the monsoon season is like in Bangladesh, and I know what winter's like in Korea. And oh my gosh.